He had exceptional talent with a sword. There was nothing he couldn't learn and nothing that could escape his blade. He even trained so hard that he had bloodstains on the palms of his hands, but after dropping out of high school, he spent 20 years honing his knife skills and became the best swordsman in the country. In the next scene, we see a guy slicing a fish to plate in a restaurant. People are moving back and forth, calling out table orders amid the usual chaos of a busy kitchen. Then something catches the attention of the people outside the kitchen, and even the chefs are staring at someone. The man is there, intensely focused on cutting the fish. One of the staff members tells the head chef that his phone is ringing. He's wearing headphones, so he didn't hear it. He says, I should have set it to vibrate. Then he notices a notification from a game he had already uninstalled. Why was it showing up? Was the phone glitching? Suddenly, someone informs the chef that a guest has arrived, but the chef responds, "For God's sake, just say I'm not here." However, the guest is already approaching. He's there to demand an answer from the chef, believing he has given him more than enough time to think. "It's not a difficult request for someone who works with blades all day," he says. Then he pauses and adds, "Sorry, maybe I'm being a bit insensitive." He opens a briefcase full of money and says he'll make sure not to disappoint the chef. An advance payment of 300 million. But the chef simply chops something and says, "This kitchen is a clean place. There's no room for filthy people like you." What he chopped was a tuna hanging nearby. The guest gets furious, saying that the chef is practically a sword saint. What's a sword saint doing in a kitchen? Just cutting up fish. When the man grabs a knife, everyone is completely shocked. As the man storms out, he says he won't give up on the chef that easily and will return soon to talk again. Later, the chef steps out to smoke. Another employee comments on the 300 million offer, saying he would have taken it. The chef replies that he's only ever cut fish heads, never been a criminal. The man asks, "So you only have a reputation? You've never slit anyone's throat?" He tells him to just take the money, scare the person, do something with the knife, then use the money to open a shop, buy a house. Everyone deserves to live like a human being, right? But the chef says he wouldn't take it even if it were $1 billion. Then the man notices the chef's phone buzzing with notifications and teases, "Wow, you've got a lot of girlfriends, huh?" The chef replies that it's just some boring game. The man asks, "Oh, that divine protection game?" The chef says yes, but he had already quit it. Someone calls the employee back to clean the kitchen, and the chef begins reflecting on his youth. His family had gone bankrupt, and he started working all the time trying to live like a human being. Maybe he had focused too much on earning money. He wonders why the phone is still getting game notifications. Did he reinstall it after drinking? Anyway, he decides to delete it again, but when he tries to clear the notification, he accidentally taps it and the game Divine Protection opens. He thinks that even though he didn't play the game much, its soundtrack is nostalgic, and the female characters are still as beautiful as ever. Suddenly the phone begins to lag, and then everything starts to glow. In the next scene, we see the employee coming out again, saying they're calling the chef, but he's gone. The man wonders where the chef went and why he left his phone behind like that. Someone asks, "Where's the chef?" And he replies, "I don't know, maybe he went to take a dump." Meanwhile, on the phone screen it says, "Transfer complete, 100%. The following scene explains a bit about the game Divine Protection. It's a typical pay-to-win mobile game. You pay and become strong. It has a boring auto-hunting system and is a super generic game that doesn't need much explanation. Someone says, "So you might be wondering, why do I play this game then?" The person explaining admits it's because he likes the appearance of the little girls in the game. He never spent a single cent on in-game purchases, nor did he complete any of the game cycles. He never even played with a main character or an NPC. In fact, he ended up getting reincarnated as one of the background characters, and his name is Kang Yiomar. Then suddenly, while walking down the street, a woman bumps into him. He's the typical League of Legends player thinking, "Oh my god, a woman." He asks if she's okay since they bumped into each other, but she says it's fine, it was her fault. Meanwhile, the protagonist is thinking about how the game is based in Korea. The names, locations, geography, and even the language are pretty much the same as Korean, more or less. There are some differences, but still, everything was heavily inspired by Korea itself, so thanks to that, he adapted very easily. He's still a teenager, at least for this year, and he lives inside the game without knowing whether reality is a game, or maybe just pretending not to know, living a completely normal high school life just like he did in his past life. It's a very typical secondary life. Then, when he says he's home, someone gets very excited and says that the pride of the family has finally returned. That person is his mother, who shows him a letter saying that he's been accepted into a university. He responds, "Please, Mom, can you stop with this for now?" But she insists, saying she's very proud and has already looked at that letter over and over again. Geomma's parents were way more excited than he was, even though tomorrow would be his entrance ceremony. They ask if he's packed everything for the trip. He says yes, he just needs to finish a few things. He thinks to himself that his peaceful, ordinary life is now completely ruined. In his room, feeling very discouraged, he thinks that the time has come. Everyone's too excited, so he can't just give up on this university. He had already asked to withdraw several times, but it didn't work. He's exhausted. He wonders, Kang Yiomar, how did he even get accepted into a school like this, looking so unremarkable? Then it's explained what actually happened. When he first entered this body, his parents told him that the previous year he had manifested his blessing. He was confused, thinking, what do you mean? Apparently, just before he took over Geommar's body, the original Yiomar had manifested a blessing, which made him pass the entrance exam to Awakens Academy immediately. The protagonist wonders, is this kid some kind of genius? It's explained that a blessing allows humans to use special abilities, basically the same concept as in the game. But not all humans have divine protection. A lot of it comes down to genetics. Richer and more noble families are more likely to have blessing. That's why an elite academy, Awakens, was founded. It was supposedly created to train heroes, but of course it's only open to the elite. However, a new admission program for people from non-heroic families had recently been introduced, and that's how Yiomar was accepted. The reason they need heroes is to fight monsters, but the protagonist says he doesn't want that reality. It's not his reality. He doesn't want to be in a school being trained to become a hero and go to war. He gets bored just thinking about the fact that he has a blessing. Then his status window pops up and he says it still looks ugly as always. The system shows that he has the blessing of no pain, which stays active for 30 seconds and has a 12-hour cooldown. The protagonist wonders if that's really what got him accepted into the academy. 30 seconds. 12-hour cooldown? That's just sad. But he remembers, that's not the blessing he received when he arrived in this body. The true blessing is from the god of the sword. Anything he hits with a blade will be cut. The activation time is infinite. The effect only works with blades 30 centimeters or less in length and 5 centimeters or less in thickness. He wonders if this blessing is too powerful. Maybe someone's messing with him. He says he's never even seen this ability in the game, but the description is also very basic. If it hits, it cuts. How does that even work? There must be a condition for activation. Then he looks at the blade specs and realizes it's the perfect size for a sashimi knife, the same kind he used his entire past life. The protagonist still has no idea what the game wants from him. Life never goes the way he wants. He finally finishes packing, but oops, he forgot his equipment. Then he starts thinking about the gear he had when he first started the game. Even E-rank equipment costs millions. S-rank gear? Maybe only 2 people in the world have it. He doesn't want anything flashy, so he doesn't waste money. But he also knows if he shows up at school with no equipment at all, he'll stand out. Eventually, he gives in and decides to prepare some equipment. He remembers that in his past life, a teacher insisted that Japanese knives are worth it, so why not give it a try? After all, someone who's truly skilled never blames their tools. The next day, he's all dressed up and ready, carrying his bags. Someone wonders what exactly he's bringing. We see that he's packed with a bunch of sashimi knives. He's standing in a line for the equipment inspection that happens on the first day. The muscular instructor doing the inspection thinks to himself, there's always one prankster every year. I've got to show them who's boss. He slams the table and asks, you think this academy is a joke? You're going to enter this academy with kitchen knives as your equipment? But the protagonist calmly replies, this is my equipment. The instructor stares at him for a moment, then gets angry and shouts, student. But Yiomar simply responds, sir instructor, I'm a special admissions student from an ordinary family. My family is not in a position to provide me with proper equipment, Yiomar says. Are you going to keep doing this disservice? An instructor notices that his tag is a different color, meaning he's a special admission student, and thinks, real equipment is extremely expensive. Now that I think about it, people like him will have a huge disadvantage in their education, won't they? Then, the protagonist throws a sharp comment at him, saying that blaming someone for their equipment is incredibly immature. He holds tightly to a principle ingrained in his mind. An expert never blames their tools. He reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship without ever having proper gear. That's the life philosophy he carries with him. Suddenly, the instructor feels his presence and says that the protagonist is definitely a goch, perhaps a reference to someone talented or special. Then another instructor announces that the student Yiomar, admitted through special admission, is allowed to use his own equipment. Naturally, the protagonist thanks them before leaving. Of course, the snobby rich students start talking trash about him because of his special admission, but the instructor immediately tells everyone to shut up. Now, he's standing by the protagonist's side. He says that it all depends on their actions, not where they came from. Understood? And everyone replies, yes, sir. The protagonist thinks, after this, I'm definitely going to have PTSD. Later, he says he needs a break. He didn't expect entering the academy to be this awkward and uncomfortable, but at least his equipment evaluation is done. Now he just has to take the test to determine what class he'll be placed in. He thinks, one way or another, I've made it far. This is an extremely privileged academy, Awakens Academy. He admits that it's totally different from just looking at it through a phone screen. The campus is ridiculously huge, like a small city could fit inside it. The protagonist has to admit this place is actually pretty cool. He reflects that he's now in a school full of high-class people. In his past life, he had to drop out of school because of money. He wonders if he ever imagined being in a place like this. Suddenly, a voice on the speaker announces that the exam will begin and all new students must gather by 3 p.m. The protagonist thinks, so soon? I already passed the entrance ceremony, but this test is way more important. He says he needs to test out his new equipment. Then he pauses, realizing, wait, I haven't touched a knife since I got here, have I? He remembers his master who always told him, never let go of your sword, sleep with it if you must. He lived 22 years by the sword, surely 1 year of rest hasn't dulled his skills, right? He inspects the knife to see if it's sharp and says not bad at all, to be honest. He goes to test it by slicing a leaf, but as he draws the blade, it starts to energize. The system announces that the conditions to activate the blessing of the sword god have been met. However, it warns that the protagonist's body is still too weak, and so is the equipment. Then a suppression takes place to sync the power with his current body and weapon. Yiomar thinks, wait, is the ability activating already? He activates the skill at level 1, and the system says, may the gods bless you. Then he suddenly feels immense pain as the energy flows through the knife in his body. He thinks he might die from the pain, but he survives and finds himself in a completely different space. He wonders, what the hell just happened? When he drops the knife on the ground, it seems like the universe, the very fabric of reality, begins to rebuild itself. He realizes, wait, I'm back. That whole thing happened the moment he let go of the knife. What the hell is going on? He feels an intense headache. He thinks the skill activated, but why did the blessing make the whole world fall apart? And is this headache a side effect? Apparently, when he previously used the no-pain blessing, he only ended up with some muscle soreness afterward. He wonders if it's going to hurt this much every time. How am I ever going to use my knife? Again, the loudspeaker calls for all new students to gather immediately. He thinks about whether he can even pick up the knife again. He can't just leave a Sashimi knife lying around on the ground, right? Maybe it only hurt because it was the first time. Maybe it'll be fine now. But the moment he picks the knife up again, intense pain strikes. In the next scene, we're in the training area. Lots of students are already gathered, waiting. Several nobles are chatting, and we see someone very important among them. The Sword Emperor Segveri Wan Nibelung, a 7-star hero. They say he's a direct descendant of Aaron Nibelung, and beyond that, he's the apprentice of the legendary hero, currently the most powerful human alive. The nobles get a bit intimidated by his presence and start looking for seats. Then a woman appears alongside the Sword Emperor. She's also a 7-star hero known as the Poison of Medea. She asks the Emperor how his half a century of his life later. Isekied just says, Medea, and asks, you're dressed like that at an academy? Are you seriously using turning 70 as an excuse to say you're going crazy? She replies, every woman deserves to feel beautiful, don't you think? And says she could make him look 10 years younger with her blessing if he wanted. He responds that even at 70, she still looks like a child and that people should be judged by their character, not their age. Apparently that's her mindset too. She says that Seagay is just as silly as ever. just like in the last half-century. He calls her an old fox, but she remarks that at least today's events and people are a lot more interesting than back in their day. She then asks if Isekie's granddaughter is beautiful, but he doesn't say a word. Then, the students are informed that the match is about to begin. Everyone starts organizing themselves, and our protagonist is noticeably isolated. He thinks he might be the only one here alone. On top of that, he's a special admission student. He remembers how people tend to bully those in his position. Suddenly, someone walks by and the crowd parts naturally as she passes. The boys are all stunned by her beauty. The protagonist immediately recognizes her. She also studies here. She's Abel von Lung, granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. She's the main heroine of the game Divine Protection. The reason he spent so much money on that game. In the next scene, we're given some background information on something called subspace, created by the legendary hero Balar Joachim. It's an alternate space of reality. Pain and experience are real, but they don't affect the real world. Even murder can occur there without impacting reality. The Sword Emperor asks if the training will take place in subspace, and Maria confirms it. She explains that the school is doing things differently this year. It will be a battle royale with groups of 10. The last one standing win. There are also no equipment restrictions. Siags asks, if there are no restrictions, doesn't that mean elite students can bring whatever they want inside? Medea tells him not to even mention it. It seems that these days the academy is focusing only on money. She admits she's had a major headache because of this new system. Siag asks if she's talking about special admissions. Meanwhile, our protagonist is in awe, thinking she's even more incredible in person. Before she was just a 2D character. Now she's right in front of him. He sees other students trying to talk to her and thinks, if I were even a bit more confident, I'd be there too. Abel von Nibelung, the main character of Divine Protection. In other words, the heroine you control in the game. He reflects on how close the character was to the player and how pretty people always seem to end up in relationships. Besides, he's just a special admission student. He tells himself he won't get involved with that kind of school life. The 3 words he's set for his new life are safe, ordinary, and protected. With that approach, he'll study peacefully, get a stable job, and live a secure, peaceful life. He thinks, becoming a hero? Not a chance. I touched a knife and nearly died from the pain. Heroes protect the world. He just wants to live comfortably. Suddenly, the magic crystal begins announcing the test rules. This time it's a battle royale. Among the 10-person teams, the top-ranking students will be classified as Class 1, Star, Class 2 and 3, Dragon, Class 4 to 7, Wolf, Class 8 to 10, Ordinary. Based on these results, students will be assigned to different classes, points will be calculated automatically, and there's no time limit. The protagonist thinks the format is a lot like the game. His goal is to complete it quickly and avoid drawing attention. Then the spatial deployment device activates. The exam begins now. Suddenly, dark shadows cover the arena. The automated system says, "May the blessing of the hero be with you." The protagonist thinks he'll avoid drawing his weapon as much as possible. In the next scene, everyone is seen exiting the subspace, battered and exhausted. The magic crystal announces everyone's rankings. The Sword Emperor and Medea are watching. She thinks in this place alone we have Sieg's granddaughter and descendants of Shang Sang and Gung. These results were practically predetermined. Then she notices the time. 7 minutes. Unbelievable. She broke a record with a C-rank weapon. The weapon used was high risk. It required the user to have perfect control of their blessing. Medea comments that these new young people are acting more mature than they look. Even if they're not at the level of heroes from her era, this year's selection will definitely go down in Academy history. The Sword Emperor replies, "That's expected from my granddaughter, a true descendant of the Nibelung family." He says it looks like it's wrapping up and starts to leave. Medea says there's really not much left to see, but the Emperor asks, "Wait, there are still plenty of people left. Are you really leaving?" She says, "Uh-huh. See you in the next life, old man." Suddenly, both the Emperor and Medea feel something intense. In fact, everyone feels it. Medea asks if he felt that, and he replies, "This is just ridiculous." He says it's a feeling that's incredibly rare. He's only felt it once before, near the president. Then suddenly, a loud noise erupts, and the sky is torn open. The subspace itself is cut apart. Someone has literally sliced through the subspace. 2 people fall from the rift in the sky, and people start whispering. Wait, did they just fall from outside the subspace? Suddenly, the rift begins to shine brightly and something shoots down from it at high speed. It's a sashimi knife. Medea immediately calls the medical team to rescue the people lying on the ground. We then see our protagonist collapsed next to his knife. Now we see the scene from his perspective. He realizes the results were predetermined. There were elites in the match, but due to pure bad luck, he ended up in a life and death battle. We see other students getting massacred. He explains he ended up in the group with the evil twins, the two brothers of the Iron family, Majum and Geomma. They're shown brutally beating the other students without mercy. They're naturally talented, but also extremely violent. The protagonist notes that 30 minutes have passed and they're still beating people. Strangely, he hasn't been targeted. He wonders, am I so weak they didn't even notice me? Then, one of the brothers throws what looks like a lifeless body to the ground. He starts counting 1, 2, and then asks his brother how many he knocked out. In that moment, he stomps on another student's head, smashing it into the ground. His brother complains that he got 4 and he only got 2, but the first replies, "No, I left 1 for you." He points to a terrified girl trembling in the corner. The protagonist becomes alert. He had already been watching her for a while. She's completely panicked. She won't even be able to defend herself. The taller brother walks toward her slowly and says he likes her a lot. He loves people who cry and scream a lot. The other brother responds that, even though they're twins, the taller one is a total pervert to him. He then asks, should I start by splitting her in half? That's when the protagonist yells at them, calling them bastards and sons of, and says, even if it's just subspace, don't go this far. Are you guys psychopaths? Then he realizes, damn, I said that out loud without thinking. The two brothers suddenly turn toward him. They didn't even realize he was there. They mock him, saying he's just another disgusting special admission student and that makes them happy. The taller brother says he'll slice off his head real quick and make him pay for the insults. The protagonist, Yiomar, starts panicking. What do I do now? Do I use my blessing? He realizes it won't work. His blessing only lasts 30 seconds, and those two have been pummeling others for 30 minutes. Then he remembers his weapon, the sashimi knife. But he hesitates. Every time he activates his blessing, he feels immense pain. All he wanted was an ordinary and safe life. Half a day had passed, and he had already failed at that. The brothers wonder what he's doing. Slowly he pulls the sashimi knife from his bag. They burst out laughing, mocking him for pulling out a kitchen knife. The taller one calls him funny, but says he's going to kill him anyway, starting with smashing his head in. The protagonist thinks, this is a life or death situation. I only have 30 seconds. I need to come up with something now. He activates the pain suppression blessing, then activates the blessing of the sword god. The pain suppression nullifies the sword god's side effects. The taller brother asks mockingly, what are you going to do with a kitchen knife? Yiomar thinks, if I don't cut, I die. But will this giant fat guy really get cut by a sashimi knife? He's not a fish. He's a human. I've never cut a human before. Then he wonders, why do gangsters in movies always use sashimi knives? Do they really cut people like fish? He remembers what his master once told him. Of course not. Not even if God himself wielded it could he do that. But he also remembers another phrase. If you cut, it turns into pieces. As the fat guy lunges at him, Yiomar doesn't hesitate. He slashes with the divine slash and cleanly severs one of the brother's hands. The hand, along with the glove, falls heavily to the ground. Yiomar thinks, finally I can get payback on these bastards. We then flash back to a scene from his past life, where he asks his master why gangsters eat sashimi. The master throws a knife at him and says, I told you, just call me master. And why the hell do you care about that anyway? His master was an ex-gangster who had lost one of his hands during a gang operation. He wanted to make people happy with knives, not sad. So, he opened a sushi restaurant. However, he had exceptional skills with knives. The protagonist then asks, but why in these kinds of movies is everyone so obsessed with this type of knife? Does this really happen in real life? The master replies, if you stab someone with a wide kitchen knife, their skin will contract quickly, making it look like the knife comes out easily. But sashimi knives are thin, allowing you to stab and pull them out repeatedly. The protagonist asks, what do you mean stab? Don't you mean cut? If it can cut fish, why not people? The master responds, "The fish is already dead, idiot. If it were alive, you wouldn't even be able to cut bread." Then the protagonist makes a comment about a cartoon chef and the master grabs him, shouting, "What damn cartoon?" and slaps him on the head. "You think a knife works like that, you little brat?" He starts smacking the boy's back. Back in the present, we see the enemy's arm has been cut off like butter. He starts screaming and flailing, shouting that his arm has been chopped off and that it hurts. He's terrified of the protagonist now and starts begging him to stay away, fleeing in panic. Meanwhile, the other brother is just frozen in shock by what he's witnessed. The taller brother is crying, calling for help, and just as he screams for his brother again, his head is split clean in half. The surviving brother sees half of his twin's face fall at his feet. He finally reacts by screaming. The protagonist stands there, possessed by rage. The remaining brother thinks, "It's okay, my brother isn't really dead. This is just a subspace." But deep down he wonders, who is this guy? He just split a head in two with a knife. He realizes he must be extremely cautious of that sashimi knife. Thinking his brother lost only because he was careless, the remaining twin grabs the severed arm and steals his glove, equipping both of them now. He activates the Blessing of Resolve, which boosts his defense, increases his jump height by 200%, and enhances his punching power. Now he has 3 buffs active at once. He declares, "It doesn't matter where you got that knife. Not even an S-rank weapon can pierce my defense now." But our protagonist is counting down. He's at 21 seconds. The big guy sees an opening and charges at him, mocking him for mumbling instead of fighting. "You're gonna die now, kid. I'm gonna crush your skull." But the protagonist keeps counting. 7, 6. Suddenly the brute realizes he's on the ground with countless knives stuck in his body. At 3, the man dies. Right then, the system announces that the pain suppression blessing has ended, and the protagonist starts screaming in agony while clutching the sashimi knife. In the next scene, he slowly opens his eyes and asks if he's in a hospital. As he tries to get up, he's overwhelmed by pain. Someone quickly passes by the door checking if he's awake and then runs off to report it. The protagonist thinks he just saw a face he never expected to see. The person who, 50 years ago, annihilated the Demon King's army. Standing in front of him are the 2 7-star heroes, the strongest human, Siegfried, and the Academy director, Medea. He wonders why these legendary figures are here. Then Sieg asks him for his name. He replies, "Yiomar," and cuts straight to the point, asking what he did inside that space. Yiomar remembers the sensation he felt. It wasn't even him in that moment. He wasn't himself in that body. He is already holding his sword, and the protagonist realizes it's very bad to be the target of that man. He says that even though it was just a subspace, he thought the twins went way too far and that he knows he himself went too far too. He says he's ready to accept any punishment. Sieg stares at him, but Medea interjects, "Come on, old man, are you really trying to intimidate the poor kid?" She sits beside the bed and tells Yiomar that it was Sieg who cleared his blocked meridians while he was unconscious. Apparently, she adds, the older people get, the more stubborn they become. She leans in, saying playfully, "Come on, little guy, at least look at me. I really like shy boys." Geomar, Sieg, and even another man named Freud all become embarrassed by her behavior. Yiomar wonders, why did the swordmaster do that for me? Then he realizes it's no surprise his body feels much lighter than before. Medea tells him they reviewed the footage from the room he was in and she says she was moved. He had protected a disadvantaged student like a prince from her dreams. "Maybe you're my little hero," she teases. The emperor speaks up, "Medea." She rolls her eyes, "Fine, fine, old man." The emperor tells her to maintain her dignity, and she says she's only telling Yiomar all this so he won't worry, because he won't be punished for what he did. They were only accepted because of a favor from their very influential family. Medea says they will be expelled from the school soon. Yiomar thinks, that's a relief. At least I won't have to share my school life with people like that. But the emperor says that actually they are there for another reason. Yiomar has become the top student in the exam, and they congratulate him for it. He thinks, wait, what? He had only wanted a peaceful and safe life. In the next scene a little later at the academy, we see Medea saying that she has been the director of the academy for 20 years, but this is the first time something like this has ever happened. We return to the earlier moment and Yiomar says that he doesn't want to be first place. Both are shocked by this. Medea pleads, Yiomar, please reconsider. Do you understand what it means to be the star of the class? Maybe he didn't hear properly, but his result was determined by the exam itself. Still, he says he doesn't want it. The emperor just watches silently until Medea calls his name and we return to the present. She asks, are you upset because Yiomar took your granddaughter's spot? He replies, of course not. That would be incredibly immature. There's nothing more immature than ranking someone based solely on their connections. The academy chose the best student, so they'll just have to accept that. He reflects on how Yiomar had no exceptional innate abilities, no strong physical talents, and very little experience. Still, for a boy his age, he remembers that massive strike. Those movements he saw of Yiomar's technique at that moment embodied the very concept of skill that was the pinnacle of swordsmanship. However, he also noticed something off in the boy's meridians. His body wasn't properly trained for the skills he displayed. It was as if something had been sealed inside him, something that shouldn't have been there. He thinks to himself that even at this age, the Sword Emperor is still competitive, especially when the student is the same age as his granddaughter. Medea says, he is very attractive, isn't he? Not just the way he killed his opponents to save a defenseless girl. If I were 10 years younger, or maybe even now, I might give him a chance. She changes the subject and asks, what are you thinking about, old man? The emperor asks, what do students these days call someone like you, huh? Medea replies, why don't you use that shiny bald head of yours and try to guess? What do you think people call ladies like me? He just replies, bitch. She gets really pissed, slams her teacup on the table.